Hey, good morning, everybody. Meteorologist Jim Dickey here with another edition of Tropics Talk. Of course, tracking Tropical Storm Fred. Let's get right to it. So, Fred passed just south of Puerto Rico yesterday evening, as it did on the radar from Puerto Rico. It was easy to detect that a closed level circulation had formed up. So, again, allowed it to be officially defined as Fred, meaning we could leave behind that potential Tropical Cyclone 6. Confusing nomenclature. That's gone. But Fred not looking so healthy on the satellite presentation here this morning. As you look at what's going on here as this approaches Hispaniola, and it is approaching Hispaniola. In fact, let me dive in to some of the high-resolution satellite data right now. The center is right about here, as far as I can tell. And it's moving off to the west and the northwest. So making a beeline for the coast of the Dominican Republic. We'll get a landfall probably by the time you're watching this. All of the heavy thunderstorm activity is now off to the south and east of the center. And the cloud tops appear to be warming. So I think a couple things going on here. First, we're already starting to see the impacts of the high mountaintops in Hispaniola sort of disrupting some of that warm inflow that's trying to work in towards the center. Second, we have some westerly wind shear here that is now tilting the storm. It briefly was able to stack itself vertically, as a developing tropical system wants to do. Now you have your low-level center just off to the south of the eastern side of the Dominican Republic, and the sort of upper-level structure is being tilted away from it thanks to that westerly wind shear. Let me take those horribly drawn arrows off of there for you. There's also some very dry air sitting just off to the east here. There's a potential that some of that is being entrained. I think we're seeing some of that dry air working in towards the core right now. So I think bottom line, Fred is going to struggle to survive here through the day. Again, there's the wind shear. You can see it picking up. It's now moving into that area of higher shear on our map as it approaches land. The dry air, very evident ahead of it too, still, as it has been. It's created this little pocket of moisture for itself that's been able to avoid that dry air being brought in. But now that it's showing signs of breaking down a little bit, I think that dry air that's over Haiti will be more successful in trying to punch into the core. And then, of course, the big factor, the biggest factor today, the terrain of the Dominican Republic and Haiti. In the center of the island, we're talking peaks at about 10,000 feet. I think the big question is exactly what path does this take across Hispaniola? Because yes, while the center of the island has those very high mountaintops, and Haiti is very mountainous as well, the northeast side of the Dominican Republic, a few higher ridges, but it's pretty flat out there too, some decent valleys. If it takes a more northerly track, that could allow it to avoid some of those high mountaintops. But so far, it's been staying a little south of the hurricane center's projected path, and it looks to be, at least at this point, unless it makes more of a northerly turn, on a beeline for these high mountaintops. When you look at the spaghetti plots, most show it staying just on the northern side of the highest of the high mountains, but enough of a land interaction here, and really for about 12 to 24 hours, that's going to absolutely shred this thing's very weak core, and then head to the north and west from there. So it does get back into water by tomorrow. I think the big question is, what does survive? Is this even holding on to tropical depression status? Is it just an open wave as it moves back into the waters near the Turks and Caicos in the southern Bahamas? Because it will then move over the straits and have the opportunity to develop from there. When you look at the intensity models, most show, again, that weakening in the near term, falling back off the tropical depression strength, and then that general uptick in intensity. Right about 72 hours, that's when most models say this begins to regenerate itself. That's when it's moving south of the Florida Peninsula in all likelihood, and heading into the Gulf of Mexico, and a ramp up from there all the way until an eventual final landfall, likely in the Panhandle. And again, I do think it's important to point out for our purposes here in Southwest Florida, yes, we're still in that cone of concern. There's still plenty of wiggle room in this forecast, but there's pretty good model agreement at this point in time that the center would stay to our south and west. And again, as a fairly weak storm, I want to point out in particular the red line on this, that's sort of the bottom of that intensity. That's the GFS forecast model, which has been very successful over the last year in forecasting tropical storms and hurricanes. So this is what it shows, and it breaks this thing down entirely. In fact, I think maybe a little too weak. It actually has it already broken down before it even reaches Hispaniola today. Keeps it as an open wave, moving it across Cuba, tries to wrap itself back up going into Saturday evening, but still, I don't even see a closed circulation on the winds at that point in time. Now maybe back to tropical storm, and then it noses this into the Panhandle. But I point this out because here in Southwest Florida, yes, we likely avoid a direct landfall here, and this is likely to be a weaker system because of those limiting factors we talked about as it swirls up our coastline than even what Elsa was going back about a month ago. But still, just like Elsa, we're going to be on the eastern side of the center, which historically is the stormier side of a tropical storm or hurricane. There you go. There's the GFS forecast model, even showing the system very, very weak, not even a tropical storm on that model as it's moving by the coastline. Still some prolific rain totals, 2 to 6 inches piling up. You see some pixels out there in the Gulf of Mexico would be 6 to 10 inches of rainfall. Now, the European forecast has lower amounts, but still a good soaking, a good 1 to 3 inches of rain piling up. That's more like a bad rainy season weekend than anything that would cause widespread flooding, but still, we'd be talking some stormy weather in that scenario. I think at this point in time, the wind threat is fairly low for our area, especially if this falls apart today over the Dominican Republic and Haiti. Hurricane Center has about a 10 to 20% chance of even tropical storm force winds. That's winds at 40 miles per hour or stronger. I think just like Elsa, if we're going to see tropical storm force winds, it's likely right along the coast. It's not going to be a big wind field, especially as it's breaking apart once again. It's not going to have much time to sort of expand that wind field. So I do think the strongest winds will be right along the coast. And even then, 40 mile per hour winds, nothing we can't handle here in Southwest Florida. So here's still what I'm thinking on the threats. I haven't changed this at all since yesterday. The main threat from Elsa will be for flooding rainfall, heavy rainfall, and at the very least localized flooding. Wind damage, low end threat at this point in time. I think we see tropical storm force gusts, especially by the coast. That would be Saturday night through early Sunday. Coastal flooding at high tide, something we'll have to watch for. That's going to be especially be true if this is able to come together a little more quickly and have more of that defined circulation that can really move the waters around. But we could get into a period of onshore winds where at high tide you could see that 1 to 2 foot water level rise that we often see with storms that take a track like this. And at high tide that could lead to some flooding in the more notorious spots here in Southwest Florida that tend to see flooding in these events. And then tornadoes. Anytime you have a close by or landfalling tropical system, you have to think about the isolated tornado threat, which I do think will be out there at this point in time. Again, we're talking Saturday night into Sunday. I'll leave you with the latest cone of concern. And again, the Hurricane Center brings this over Hispaniola. Note that jump northward. This is the 8 o'clock cone, which is not a brand new cone. It's just an update with position from the new cone they put on at 5 a.m. Note that jump to the north. That's because this continues to run a little further to the due west than the northwest, as the Hurricane Center has been anticipating. So with that, again, it brings it more in line to go right over the mountains. They weaken it to a depression over Hispaniola today. But back to a weak tropical storm moving just north of Cuba. Again, the cone shows maybe it goes over the coast of Cuba, which would help to keep it weak and disorganized. There's still going to be wind shear. There's still going to be dry air. So intensity-wise, staying as a marginal tropical storm at best through Saturday. And then once it's in the Gulf, conditions become ripe for strengthening. We are in that cone all across Southwest Florida now. The Hurricane Center says by 2 a.m. Sunday, a 50 mile per hour tropical storm. You have to remember what the cone shows you. It shows you the forecast error out in time. By the time we get out 5 days, so by Monday, the average error is 200 miles. History tells us the center could be anywhere from Jacksonville to all the way by the coast of Mississippi. And while most models are in pretty good agreement that this follows that sort of center track, there's, again, always uncertainty with a hurricane forecast in time. That's why the NHC reports their forecasts in this cone. So it's a system that we'll be watching closely here. I want you to be sure you're doing that too. Be sure you have your hurricane kit together. In all likelihood, this is a weak system passing by with the main threat being heavy rain, but be sure to keep one eye on the forecast here these next couple of days, and we'll be bringing you frequent updates on air and online here at ABC7. That includes tonight. Chief Meteorologist John Patrick, he'll be back with a full forecast with the latest on Fred at 6, 7, and 11 on ABC7. Until next time, meteorologist Jim Dickey, have a great day.